We need Mel Gibson to direct the Book of Mormon.
Like, no, I mean, we could do it. The church could fund it. The
Yeah,
church could fund it. It could be an Oscar
totally.
winner. It would convert so many people.
But what you're saying is an individual relationship with our Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, and a testimony is what's going to be the strongest. Uh, what's going to be stronger than anything?
Well, where do we get the Book of Mormon from? I mean, if Moroni hadn't preserved it, you know, where would that physical book that allowed the witnesses to gain a testimony of its authenticity? Moroni had no church.
No.
The church was destroyed. It had fallen wicked. It was one guy with his belief in the Father and the Son who preserved. So the whole reason we have the Book of Mormon is actually from a guy who had no church, right?
Right, right.
There was no institution. There was no 501c3. It didn't exist. It was just Moroni. And I think that's really important. And I think that's really
There was no 501c3.
Yeah, there wasn't.
You should write a book about Moroni. Well, there was no 501c3.
Right. But that's important to note because we think the institution and the general authorities are going to carry us into the second coming. And everyone would be like, did you guys see that new wacko Mormon movie where he's like Porter Rockwell? Like we're talking, he throws the golden plates at someone and it decapitates them. We do have a bit of a follow the leader mindset in our church. I think that's going away. And
well, when you say follow the leader, are you talking about follow the prophet?
Well, what I'm mostly mean is, oh crud! 1 minute, I've got to.
No, you're good. That's kind of your trademark there. Looking at your cell phone, I noticed that on Word Radio, it would catch you once in a while. You'd be like,
I know. I always get
sorry.
It's the worst time. No, so
doing business while you're doing a podcast.
I know.
It's all right. You're good, man. Relax. You're cool. I kind of want you to know. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I don't. So when I say follow the leader, it's more so. They've done these studies based on generations and what generations value most sociologically in their community, and you find that baby boomers and up really value loyalty, like very, very much. Whereas millennials don't value loyalty as much as they value authenticity, right? So they've been able to find these traits that different generations hyper focus on, and it looks like Gen Z values truth almost to a fault.
Yeah.
Where sometimes Generation Z can be almost without empathy. So they've done these studies, and I think when you look at the way the church oftentimes wants loyalty out of its members, I think it comes from the pre-1950s generation,
right?
Where loyalty is a very, very important thing.
Well, it's still with the Gen Xers, though. I mean, we were still, the 80s emulated the 50s. If you go back to the 80s, we were watching movies like Back to the Future. I remember going and watching that in the theater when it came out. So today's the 80s is no longer the 30 year back. Now we're looking at the 90s, right? And even the early 2000s as being antiquity. But the 80s emulated the 50s. So we were still in that mindset. That's all I wanted to say. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well,
as far as being loyal to something.
Right. And so what we're seeing right now in church media, we're seeing this really interesting intersection. You've got guys like Greg Mattson from Quick, right?
Right.
But then you'll have some TikToker who is like Pierce Smith or something. One of these TikTokers, maybe Pierce Smith is not a good example, but who is 21, and they both go to the same church and have a testimony of the restored gospel. But this person will say, I really liked this person's talk. I don't really like what Elder Blank said here at conference. I think it was kind of off, but and that sentence would not never been uttered by some of like Greg Matson's a circle.
Yeah.
And so what you're finding is that we're seeing that discrepancy, and there's a little bit of uncomfortability, but I think it's legitimately just generational differences, right? When because these guys weren't raised with the loyalty. They were raised with. I mean, how long has Julie Hanks been popular? A decade? You know, um, how long has John DeLynn been popular? A decade?
Right.
And I'm not saying Julie Hanks and John DeLynn are one of the same, but I'm saying you have critical voices in the church and critical voices outside of the church that have now are such a mainstream part of church media. The loyalty to church authorities, church correlation, and anything coming from you know the church TM is like not seen as important. And so it's a generational thing. And so I kind of realize that, and I think now is the best time to just say whatever you want
You know what?
because well,
I think it's because of transparency. We didn't have enough of that when I was younger. We were loyal to, for instance, being on my mission. We had missionaries that would pull out Bruce R. McConkie's Mormon Doctrine, and that was doctrine. We thought that was doctrine. But then
right.
later, when the internet started coming, when YouTube took off and you had truther podcasters, and then with truther podcasters, you had anti-Mormons taking off in 2017, not just John DeLynn. I'm talking post John DeLynn or mid John DeLynn. You had, the CES letter and things like that. I think it's because your younger generation was getting transparency from the internet and from YouTube and from all the other social media outlets. And then we had faith crisis, right? We had that started coming to fruition. So I came from a generation that thought that things that were not doctrinal, but were opinions of prophets and apostles and things that there was no stance on, we thought were doctrine. I taught on my mission that the Urim and Thummim was used to translate the Book of Mormon. We never talked about seer stones. That was foreign. So I think that could be it too, is that you guys are used to everything's just out of the closet now. So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And we didn't have that. That was kind of the dark ages for me.
Well, which is a good thing in my opinion. We're witnessing such a everything's kind of the whole foundation of classic American Western society is shaking right now because we're going through a whole reformation where everything is changing. I mean, we're going into the AI digital age, right?
Right. But what you're saying is an individual relationship with our Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, and a testimony is what's going to be the strongest. What's going to be stronger than anything?
Well, where do we get the Book of Mormon from? I mean, if Moroni hadn't preserved it, where would that physical book that allowed the witnesses to gain a testimony of its authenticity? Moroni had no church.
No.
The church was destroyed. It had fallen wicked. It was one guy with his belief in the Father and the Son who preserved. So the whole reason we have the Book of Mormon is actually from a guy who had no church, right?
Right.
There was no institution. There was no 501c3. It didn't exist. It was just Moroni. And I think that's really important. And I think that's really
There was no 501c3.
Yeah, there wasn't.
You should write a book about Moroni. Well, there was no 501c3.
Right. But that's important to note because we think the institution and the general authorities are going to carry us into the second coming. There's five or 10 new Bible movies that come out every year. And it's like, what do we have? We have the Book of Mormon videos on YouTube, which are meh. And then we have that one Testaments movie from like 2001.
Right.
It's
we need a Braveheart. We need a Braveheart production of the Book of Mormon. We need Mel Gibson to direct the Book of Mormon.
Like, no, we could do it. The church could fund it.
Yeah,
The church could fund it. It could be an Oscar
totally.
winner. It would convert so many people, but we just want to buy up land and do real estate instead. I see.
Well, that's good too, but I know your point.
If I were to make it, I would do it differently. I would do it Quentin Tarantino style, and I would purposefully make it bad because oftentimes they say sell your first, love your second. And sometimes the first movie you make needs to just be an audience grabber so they can trust that you get revenue and then you can make something you really like the second time. I would do, Card and I have joked about doing a Quentin Tarantino style Porter Rockwell movie. Just really, the violence is so ridiculous. Robert Rodriguez style.
Like a Hateful Eight style. Hateful Eight.
Yeah, or
like a spaghetti western, something spaghetti western.
So ridiculous,
right?
And everyone would be like, "Did you guys see that new wacko Mormon movie where he's like Porter Rockwell? Like we're talking, he throws the golden plates at someone and it decapitates them. Like just
and the cinematography's like from the 70s where it kind of zooms in on him.
Make it so bad on purpose so everybody watches it and it makes a ton of money. That's what I would do.
Oh, definitely. That would work.
Who made you so mad? Tell me, where did you learn to be so negative? You're such a